Welcome to the Auto Show. I'm your host, BeefLoaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selections of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday Nights Only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and you get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at the normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. The 108ers and our good friends from SoxMachine are hosting a live show, our annual opening day eve show, Wednesday, March 26th at Ramova Theater Loft, 3520 South Halsted in Bridgeport. Doors open at 6 p.m. with panels promptly starting at 7:30 p.m. Tickets are $20 online. Go to 108.ing/EVE. That's 108.ing/EVE to buy tickets. This show is also powered by you, loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest, unfortunately, is just me. That's right, we're going to do a little solo beef tonight. I have guests lined up coming in the future weeks, but no guests lined up today. And I do have some things I kind of want to get off my chest. This plans to be as organized as a monkey shit fight, so apologies up front. But I'm going to break form a little bit here and put a new rule since I'm doing solos. When I do a solo show, if you put a super chat with a question in there, I will answer it. Up until the time we decide that it's time to not be doing the show anymore tonight, I'll answer super chats. Normally, I would never do that because we have guest-driven stuff and they want to get things off their chest. So anyway, the White Sox are basically two full weeks into the residency in Camelback Ranch with about a month to go before they come north for the lid lifter. That's going to be March 27th, a Thursday at Sox Park. There's a bunch of storylines kind of developing, and there's stuff happening in spring training that's meaningless to me, stuff that's happening in spring training that has more meaning than it looks like on its surface. And so I just wanted to discuss a few of those items with you tonight. First things first, and we're going to do this like book chapters because I chopped it up into 5 pieces here for a discussion. The first book chapter, if you will, is post-traumatic growth in the Andrew Benintendi injury. A lot of you know who are big Sox fans. On Thursday in Cactus League play, Andrew Benintendi broke his pinky finger. Yeah, the little tip and the pinky finger. It's a non-displaced fracture, which means it doesn't need a cast to heal. It's just going to take some time. The early reports were outlining 4 to 6 weeks as the timeline, which to me this seemed like basically a non-event. Then I went out into the Twitterverse, the X, if you will, to check out the responses from White Sox fans. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little taken aback, or maybe I shouldn't be, but all the blubbering and crying and the "oh, woe is me" and "not again" type bullshit stuff. We need to take a step back here for a couple reasons. But number one, Benintendi's a below-average player. He's being paid kind of league average wages for his craft. He has basically no use for the White Sox at this point in time. It's not really a big deal that the guy got injured. Also, when you look at the forecast of 4 to 6 weeks at the timing in which he got injured, even at the back end of that, if you take the full 6 weeks, 6 weeks would have him missing 12 regular season games roughly, and that's about 7% of the season. This doesn't matter at all. None of this matters. In fact, Treasy wrote an article about who might benefit from Benintendi being out, and the answer really kind of is nobody, because 12 games isn't shit. Yeah, maybe someone will make the team that wasn't going to originally make the team, and maybe they got a little bit of a shot to show something there, but it's such a minor thing, and it shouldn't really bother anyone. Now, I've heard of the term post-traumatic stress disorder. And clearly the whiny, complainy, pussy-ass arm of White Sox Twitter in particular, because that's where I'm seeing a lot of the responses, are kind of hiding behind this. The "oh, woe is me." The White Sox have been through the worst that you could possibly go through. And so now I get to just be like an asshole and complain about everything and cry all the time. And that's not healthy for all of you. I don't like seeing that. And it's not because it annoys me in particular, but it's like, that's really not the thing that you enjoy. You shouldn't react like that towards it. It shouldn't kind of trigger some of that stuff. I don't know if any of you have heard of the term of post-traumatic growth. That's kind of the inverse. You know, you have some trauma, but the trauma makes you more resilient. It helps you balance. You become more thoughtful, more emotionally healthy. I would like, and I see a little of it in Sox Twitter, I would like to see Sox Twitter respond like that to what we've just been through. Look, now you realize you don't go ahead and believe all the prospects will hit right away, right? That's a healthy, natural thing to do. But crying over every single injury, even one as meaningless as Andrew Benintendi's, I don't need to make light of it. I mean, I have nothing personal against Andrew Benintendi. He's just not an important cog on this team, all right? He's going to go out there and he'll play however many games he plays, and he'll be running out the clock on his salary. He's a vestige of the Rick Hahn era. He's not in the future plans. And even if he plays really well, you can't really trade him for much of anything. So even from that standpoint, he's still a nothing. He's just biding time. So what I'd like to see, and maybe I'm the silent majority on this, is I would like to see us just trudge on. Not worry about this shit. Let some shit roll off our backs. And that's where that comes in, the post-traumatic growth. I'd like to see post-traumatic growth from White Sox fans. We've been through trauma. That's fine. We've got to start dealing with it in a healthier fashion. We used to deal with it with humor. But unfortunately, some of that humor has evaporated. And now it's just whiny crybabyism. And trust me, I'm not name calling. I am a recovering crybaby. I used to be a big crybaby, okay? So I know what I speak of. And the recovery is hard, but I think I can manage to get you guys through it, okay? So bottom line, the Benintendi injury is meaningless. Don't worry about it. He comes back when he comes back. Someone will be in his place in that time. That shouldn't bother you at all. If you like him, if you hate him, fine. Doesn't matter. Next up. Speaking of it doesn't matter, here's some things that I just think don't matter right now, and they seem to be getting some attention out there in the media, out there amongst the fans, and it's fine. Look, spring training overreactions are pretty fun, and I don't want to corral anyone from doing it. Please react to what you react to, think what you think, enjoy what you're enjoying out there. Make proclamations. Look, that's what's fun about fanning. Lenyn Sosa has come out of the gate in spring training hot as hell, and I'm here to tell you that it is absolutely meaningless, all right? He's a post-type prospect with terrible on-base skills. He generally has terrible swing decisions as well. This is kind of the opposite of everything that Chris Getz is pulling together with the team that he's trying to assemble, kind of almost from scratch as he gets rid of players from the last group. Lenyn Sosa doesn't fit that group. His infield defense is generally poor at every position. Now, they're playing him at first base today. I think he could probably handle first base. He is a legit 6 foot tall, so maybe he's tall enough to receive some throws, unlike some other guys that we may be lying about their 6 feet height, okay? A hot spring training for Lenyn Sosa means absolutely zero to the BeefLoaf, okay? I think there are paths for Lenyn Sosa to make the roster, but I don't think much of it has to do with being 5 for 9. I just don't think it matters. And his line going into today, I didn't see. I saw earlier he was 0 for 2, but he was 5 for 9, 5 RBIs, and 2 walks. So he had a very, very hot start out of the gate. But I don't think much of that matters. The 3 paths for Lenyn Sosa to make this roster, in my personal opinion. Number 1, Chris Getz finally realizes that the crew that he's put together just doesn't have enough pop. There's not enough slug, if you will. There's not enough, ball go far, team go far. Not enough thump on this roster. And really, there isn't. A lot of the build here is guys who control the strike zone better, and that's what they're trying to push through here. But there isn't those guys that really wallop the ball, save for Luis Robert. So maybe he realized, okay, look, we need at least one more guy in there who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And Sosa does hit lefties. So if they thought, well, look, we're just going to play Lenyn against lefties, and then we'll see where it goes from there. If we need to use him otherwise, fine. But he's a guy at this point, he's not a prospect anymore. You could sit his ass on the bench and not worry about it one bit. So that's one. If they realize we have less power than we need on this roster, just to make this reasonable. Because remember, a lot of the planning here isn't for let's try to win as many games as we can this year. That's really not the emphasis. The emphasis is trying to figure out the parts. Which one of the parts work? And if we can figure out these parts do work, or these parts hit, or these parts are good at doing this role, That's good. We'll start to maneuver around that. But right now, your assumption is you have Luis Robert and you have a bunch of shit that you don't really know what it is, and you got to try to figure it out. So power could be a component they want just at a minimum so they don't look ridiculous. They don't want to be repeating, a sub 50 win season. I know that for sure, even if they're not exclusively going for wins. Number 2, the second way Lenine Sosa can make it onto this roster is injuries. And it looks like if they're playing him at first, there's a lot of paths from that way. If Andrew Vaughn were to get banged up, or anyone in the infield, basically, would probably give Lenine Sosa a shot, track to this. The problem is there are a lot of people hanging around the sides. Brandon Drury had a good game today and kind of plays some of the same spots that Sosa does. Chase Meidroth looked nice the other day. I don't know that they'll push him up onto the roster, not even being on the 40-man. But when you look around in the various corners, there are people lingering around here, and so you kind of wonder what that's going to take. But injuries would be able to help clear a path for Lenine Sosa. And number 3, the one that I'm not sure they'll be able to detect fully from just the spring training, I don't think that we could know from last year's hot September. Maybe in winter leagues they saw some stuff, I'm not sure. But it's that he adjusts his swing decisions enough to give the staff the impression that there could be more growth there. Lenine Sosa swings at everything. I think he's a career 3% walk rate guy. His on-base percentage was something abysmal, like 257 for his career. He's a guy who definitely doesn't fit the part of anything they want to do here. But if you can kind of get halfway there, if you went from your 3% walk rate to 6 or 7% with that power, maybe they can find a roster spot for you. There needs to be the incremental growth in an area where it's very difficult to grow at the age he's at. You've already been in the major leagues for a few years, and trying to tame those swing decisions usually is a tough thing to do for these older dogs. And so I think out of his current stat line, the 2 walks might be the most important shit in there. If that is real, if his ability to hold off and only swing quality pitches were to hold up, maybe he does have a shot to be in there, but being right guy, poor defender, and no walks really kind of hinders him. I'll get to a drink right now. My guy Husky Bardo, he says, "Cheers, beef." Cheers, Husky. And as I mentioned at the onset of the show, if you guys put super chats, you want to ask some questions, feel free. I rarely take questions on this show. I almost never do, but because I'm solo, why not tonight? So thank you, Bardo. Appreciate you. All right. Going back to it doesn't matter, because I've been hearing a lot about this too. Miguel Vargas looking like early season Roger Dorn in Major League at third base. I'm here to tell you right now, even if he is truly a butcher at third base, it doesn't fucking matter. It does not matter for 2025. The White Sox went out and made a trade to grab Miguel Vargas. What they're going to find out come hell or high water is, can this man hit? Can this guy be the hitter that he looked like he was going to be coming up in the Dodgers system? And so them playing him at third base has nothing to do with his defensive strength or this is his best utility as a defender. This is more like a comfort. This is more like a, let's help you try to unlock what you can unlock. These types of situations don't last forever. There's going to be a limited time in which the White Sox are going to placate a guy so that they could figure out if he is actually what they traded for. Now, you as a fan watched the end of last season. I know I did. And Miguel Vargas fucking sucked, right? And you and I, and maybe a lot of people would have thought, well, he's got to be in the hot seat for that. But in the offseason, the White Sox asked him to put on weight, which he did. They asked him to change his swing, which he did. They're going to give him some run. He's going to get plate appearances, okay? They're going to figure out one way or another whether or not this man could hit. And, the hitting mechanism right now, it seems like it's not even turned on, or trying to turn it on, it's in a foreign language. We can't get it to get going, right? And his early spring training results have not been great either, although control of the strike zone has been there. So that's a trait he's long had, and that did come back. So don't worry about if he's a butcher at third. The White Sox, they care about their defense, but ultimately what they care about is finding parts that might actually work. I don't know if Miguel Vargas is one, and if you were out there saying Miguel Vargas is definitely not one, you may end up being right. But I think the White Sox want to look at it. And when we talked about this in the 108 podcast, Treese basically said he thought they would at least give him to June to figure out, okay, can we see it? What does this look like? All right. Can he actually hit? If he can't, I think the rope, all this rope that he's getting right now, it's going to end at some point in the middle of the season. You still have Brian Ramos hanging around. But I think they don't want to just junk a trade they made immediately after a month and a half of bad results. I just don't see that. I think he's going to be given a lot of runway here, and that's basically it. I think that's it. So don't worry about his glove at third. I mean, you worry about it game to game, like we lost that game because this guy doesn't know how to fucking play third base. Absolutely, I'd be screaming and yelling with you. But I mean, as far as a long-term thing in spring training, this shit is meaningless. They're going to look at this bat. We're going to see this bat. We're going to see a couple hundred plate appearances before they make the decision. Okay, we think he can or can't cut this, and then they'll react from there. And probably what ends up happening is if they figure out that he can hit, then they won't worry so much about position. Then they'll figure out, can you play first? Or can we tolerate your third base defense? Or are you the DH now? Or whatever. But the key part is to get them comfortable enough so that they can make the evaluation if this motherfucker can hit. All right, I'll take a question from Schlespappy. Cheers, Schlespappy. And he says, at this point, who's your number one hot take? Position player, opening day starter. My opening day starter 100% is Davis Martin. It has been since August of last year. We'll get into that in a minute. Position player, let's see. Luis Robert, I think Luis Robert ends up getting traded before the season starts. He has started off red hot. So anyone who was a little apprehensive before spring training started, I think they're barreling and they're like, hey, how can we get Luis Robert off this team ASAP? I mean, the whispers of the Pirates to me was like the obvious. Pirates are the one team that they could afford to pay for Luis Robert at a slightly depressed price, and they desperately fucking need him. A lot of these other teams maybe not so much. So yeah, I mean, for me that's the case. I'm interested to see what happens in the position player battles, but the only one that looks clear to me is that I think Luis ends up off of this team, and I mean, pray for Michael A. Taylor. He would have to be in center field. So thank you, Pappy. Appreciate it. Speaking of, Davis Martin is the White Sox opening day starter. I just saw, I had this tweet, as I mentioned before. I had this tweet from August of 2024. I was probably drunk off my ass 10:30 o'clock at night. Probably had a little too much. But I believed that back then, looking at this roster. Now, I just had Jordan Lazowski on the program last week, and he extolled the virtues of a Davis Martin, and why we as White Sox fans should not only be excited about him potentially starting opening day, but just the player in general, and the fact that this guy is under team control for a long time, and that was good to hear. I went a different approach following that tweet. I decided to reanalyze and just backfit my drunken narrative, in saying that because of his adaptability, developing pitches and kind of learning things on the fly, which seems to be helpful in a Brian Bannister regime, that I thought that he was easily the guy who was going to do this. He's got the strikeout ability, which Jonathan Cannon and Martin Perez absolutely do not have. And he's looked terrific in spring training as well, so that doesn't hurt. I think I don't generally think spring training is worth much, but if you got virtual ties going on amongst, pitching really well in spring training should help a little bit, and I think that's going to be the case here. So I would say that Davis Martin, opening day starter, is pretty much a lock right now. Even if he has a couple of bumpy outings coming up after this. Next up. Yeah, yeah, Teflon Han. I got Teflon Han up here for you. And this chapter is called The White Sox 18-run outburst on Saturday was meaningless, but taught me something. And what do I mean? So the White Sox scored 18 runs against the Mariners in the spring training game on Saturday. A lot of people didn't pay too close attention to it, or weren't kind of putting an eyeball watching it, because I saw a lot of tweets like that. Oh man, I was out doing such and such, I missed it, or whatever. But obviously, anytime you put up 18 runs, you look fucking great. I enjoyed a low-stakes look at Chase Meidroth being everything I could ever dream of as a leadoff hitter. 3 walks and then a double, so he was on base 4 times. I loved watching Luis Robert lay off enough bullshit pitches to pound the ball into left field stands, and he did that again today. Luis is red hot, as mentioned. But as much as I enjoyed some of these individual performances, I realized something about what Chris Getz is trying to put together here, and I got a little glimpse of it now, and we probably won't. We'll start seeing it in 2025 because it's turned over enough now. But I think unlike in past seasons, when you had Hans crews, and especially the years where they weren't very good. They didn't have a lot of offensive talent, and I don't think this team will have a lot of offensive talent either. But those Han teams also had such a hard time when the opposing pitcher was even having a hard game or tough game or couldn't find the strike zone or was throwing meatballs, doing much with it. I think the Getz version of this, and it's a small thing, that when the other team's pitchers are struggling, when the other team's starter is struggling, they will be patient enough to take their walks. They will be smart enough to hit the good pitches that come over the plate, and they will actually run some pitchers out of games that are having a bad day. Now, that doesn't happen that often where you have a guy having a really bad day, but I think they built the group with enough on the pitch selection side and the ability to take walks that at least that little bit, that little maneuver, that little, flip over will start happening. And so it'll be enjoyable occasionally when some starting pitcher comes in here and bombs out and the White Sox get 12 runs on them and like you're celebrating a nice victory. That never happened last year. They had one game against the Yankees and that was it. Basically never happened. I think that the way they're setting this team up, it doesn't mean that it's a good team. And it's not a good team yet. But I think they're at least getting over some of the real bad traits of the old Rick Hahn groups. I think the old way, they're going to get over those bad. And then when they start adding some real offensive talent, then we might have something to look forward to here. All right, I got a super chat from Treasy, just breaking my balls here. He says, will Kyle Teal lead the White Sox in stolen bases? This looks like a fucking bullshit question, but I was looking at the White Sox. They haven't run at all during spring training. And I thought that this Walker McKinnon guy in here was going to come and help them win the game on the margins. And I heard Will Venable talking a lot about base running. And I heard Chris Getz talking a lot about using film to ensure that they were getting appropriate leads and so that they can gain more in the base paths. They're not running at all yet. And the only guy who really runs out of the group that's hanging around here is Luis Robert. I'm not sure Luis Robert even makes it north with the White Sox. He may be in someone else's dugout by then. So will Kyle Teal lead the White Sox in stolen bases? I don't know if he gets to the roster quick enough to, Treasy, but if he did, let's say he started on opening day, I'd be willing to let you lay 5-1 because I think he probably has at least, 15-20% chance to do it because he will probably run. He would probably be willing to run. And they don't have a lot of guys that run on this roster at this point. So they're eliminating one of the grudges of the bigger bases and the only 3 pickoffs, which is surprising. But hey, at this point, beggars can't be choosers. They're still in the process of developing the talent. So I don't think he'll lead it, but I don't think it's as insane as this would seem. A catcher leading the team in stolen bases. All right. Last thing. And yes, we're gonna focus in on Brian Bannister for a little bit. I wouldn't put myself low man on Brian Bannister, but I haven't been as hyped about the whole Brian Bannister thing since he arrived. And the reason is, there have been successes, but there's also been a lot of failures. And one of the main failures, and I think that they're kind of getting it right so far this year, was the bullpen. Last year's bullpen, he tried to assemble the parts. All the mismatched toys. This guy throws from this weird arm angle, and this guy throws frisbees up there, and this lefty almost throws underarm and all this shit. And basically none of it worked out. Every single turn it failed. But not only that, he had guys in guaranteed contracts in there. And so not only did it fail, but it made it harder to flip a guy out after, 6 weeks. And it's like, well, you're not doing well. Now, eventually they did with Tim Hill. Eventually they did with John Brebbia. Eventually they got Dominic Leone's ass out of here. But it took a minute for them to do that. And not only did you have a team that cost you wins, for the average fan that just wants to watch. When I'm in the stadium, I want to see them win. When I watch on TV, I want to see them win. I know the greater picture, probably not that material, but it's material to me that night when they're trying to win. And that helped your team lose a lot more than it should have and probably helped you become that record-breaking team. But you also got nothing in return for it. Most teams can harvest quite a bit out of their bullpen. Yeah, maybe it's the 15th or 20th prospect in someone else's farm system. So fucking what? The White Sox are desperate for many of them guys, and they still haven't built up the depth that you really need to kind of build like a championship crew where you've got a lot filtering through there. So they still could have used that last year. The only guys who returned anything were Tanner Banks, a.k.a. Tanner Blanks, and Michael Kopech, which were incumbents. They were guys that were already here. And so, for all intents and purposes, my liking, Bannister failed building that bullpen. And I'm going to put the blame squarely on him because I know Getz is listening to him a lot on the pitching side. So he fucked that up. Now, this year, it looks like they learned from their mistakes because what they did is something different. They mined for lower bullpen pieces. They did 40-man claims. They shuffled guys through waivers that were on the 40-man to see if they could push them down to the minors and still keep them here without having to waste a spot on them. They made small trades. They paid for cash and grabbing guys up. And what it turned out to be is you ended up with a group that has a lot of control. So you can shuffle guys from Chicago to Charlotte and back and forth. And so you can keep fresh arms. You can abort if someone's having a bad wave. A good example was they stayed with Jordan Leisure way too long. Now, you're not going to throw out Jordan Leisure. But you just didn't have the options last year. They didn't have themselves enough people in tow to make that work. And I mentioned the veterans that they kept on the roster forever because it was like, well, we're locked into these guys. They don't have that this year. In fact, the entire bullpen that Fangraphs has up for projected for opening day, everyone has options. You can slide everyone back down to Charlotte with the exception of Shane Smith, who was the Rule 5 pick, who they should 100% keep because they want to end up growing up that prospect depth. So I think that the approach this year is better. So far, the fruits that are bearing right now, Penn Murphy, my guy, Penn Murphy's going to become a big BeefLoaf guy. He just throws like this Frisbee bullshit up there, and it's absolutely, they can't hit it. And it's so much fun to watch. I have no idea why the Mariners just got rid of him. I mean, he'd been injured. I get it, but why not just take a shot and keep him in there? And Jordan Leisure's looked very sharp so far in spring training. He's been very good so far. I don't know if it keeps up. Last year he couldn't get the strikeouts, and I don't know if he was injured or what the deal was, or he just didn't have a wipeout pitch. But those guys look fine. And you start pairing them up with Fraser Elder and Gus Varlin and Justin Anderson, who's not having a good spring training so far. But there you go. Now you got his team. And now you feel a little more resilient to the Prelander-Baroa injury. But also, if anyone has issues, anyone stinks for a month, you can send them to Charlotte, bring the next arm up. And that's how good teams operate their bullpens. And also, when you move on to that next guy faster, that guy might become the guy that you could flip to some other team and get their 15th ranked overall prospect. So they've gone from the 2023 bullpen, which was all these high-cost paid-for guys that were locked in their spots. You couldn't do nothing with them. 2024, maybe the transition year, it didn't work out at all. I blame you, Brian Bannister. 2025, if we have success, this will be a feather in Brian Bannister's cap. And hopefully that bullpen won't be bottom of the league. Hopefully they can get themselves a league average bullpen. Remember, though, no one's expecting that because Dan Zamborski Zips had it projected as the worst bullpen he's ever seen. I don't believe it. I think they'll be better than that. So let me get to a super chat here. JT says, "Will Sox play service time game with prospects?" I think they will, but I don't think it's going to be quite as egregious as the era of playing service time games. And only because I think they want to see what they have in general, right? So I'll give you an example. If Colson Montgomery looks fine, I think he starts with the team. I think they won't fuck with him one bit, and he'll be in Chicago, right? If the back is still acting up or whatever, he's going to go down. Now, the guys that are not on the 40-man yet, Edgar Caro and Kyle Teal and even Chase Mydroth, my guess is they probably will kind of play games, send them to AAA, wait out a certain amount of time, see what they have on the roster. Because maybe they do want to, they've got to make a decision on Miguel Vargas. He's got to kind of play. If you had Colson up here, he's got to play. You sign Josh Rojas, and so there you go. You start running out of spots. So I think they'll kind of wait with some of these guys until it's time to, they feel that those guys are ready. But this is not true service time games. This is just being cautious. This isn't Chris Bryant being the player of the year and then them waiting 10 days to bring him up so they could steal next year. That's not the shit. I don't think they'll do that if that's what you mean. But I think they'll be cautious. They're going to be cautious with this because there's no reason to rush anybody. And also, the longer you can preserve a group of players that you like, that you think are good, that won't cost a lot, it's generally a good idea. And so I think they won't rush anyone, is the way I'll put it. Conversely, they will not rush anyone. So, but thank you, JT, for that one. Let me drink a little Michelob before I get to my guy Nathan Chiba. Nathan, long time guy, man. I miss you, buddy. I hope I see you at the ballpark this year. He says, don't you dare make me feel good about the Sox again, Beef. I'm close, so close to not caring. You know what? Don't care. Don't care. But when you check out little snippets of it, I think what we're gonna start seeing it come out of this. It's still gonna be a real bad team. But it's probably not gonna be the type of team where you're gonna get that frustrated with them. They're just not gonna have a lot of talent. I think, at least from the early returns, they seem crisper on defense, save for balls bouncing off of Oscar Colas, which that's another thing, and maybe I'll sound off on that at some other time. But I think you got to get rid of Oscar Colas simply because he does so much dumb stuff, and you got to get all the dumb stuff out of the building. White Sox been a dumb team for a while, even when they were good in like the 2021. They're kind of a dumb team. We got to get the dumbness out, and Oscar Colas making a bunch of dumb plays. We might have to get him out of here. But no, Nathan, don't care about it when you check in. When you're looking, or when you come out to the ballpark, I think it's going to be a little better brand of ball. Just won't be a very talented team just yet. And I think the pitching is going to come faster than the hitting. Right now we're praying for some of these guys to actually hit. So I appreciate the super chats, everyone. I really like it. I think it's probably time for me to get going. But before I do, I want to plug a couple things. I was at my guest plug, so I might as well plug. It's 108 tourney season. As you can see right now, we have the celeb charity version going right now. That's simply this week tournament. Main event will start on Monday, March 10th. We're going to do the bracket reveal on Thursday, March 6th. So that's going to be in the spot of the normal 108 podcast. So 8 p.m. Thursday, March 6th, we'll bracket reveal the main event 108 tourney. So vote. Have some fun with it. We do this. It's the biggest Friday follow possible for Sox Twitter. Have some fun with it. Get out there, vote, retweet it. Mess with your friends. It's a good time. Next up, I noted up front, but we're gonna have a live show on opening day eve, March 26th at the Ramova Theater Loft. $20 tickets. 108.ing/eve is the website. You can get it in the show notes if you want to. I can tell you this: we will be giving away stuff to people wearing 108 gear, so 108 shirt, 108 hat, etc. I'm putting together some treats for the group, but you're only going to get them if you're wearing 108 stuff. So if you bought a ticket, plan to go, remember to wear 108 stuff, and you have a chance to get some free shit for us. I'm not guaranteeing everyone will get it. I'm making a good amount of goodies, but we'll see. I don't know how, if we sell this thing out, maybe not everyone will get it because usually a lot of people are wearing 108 stuff. So that is basically it. Next week's guest, and I'm pretty excited about this. Next week's guest is my guy Ian Eskridge from Future Sox. Much like last year in September when I had him on, and I gave him 5 critical questions about their top 30 for their midseason. We're going to do that again, except with the list that's coming out this week. I saw James Fox posted an article about the guys that just missed. My brain's already rolling based on the guys I saw on that list. But once I see the top 30, I'm going to make up 5 questions for Ian. We'll have him on here. And my questions are generally critical, and Ian is good about answering them. No bullshit. We're going to get on here, and we're going to cut it up. And Ian also, I've known him long enough. He'll tell me if I'm full of shit, and he totally disagrees with my question or that I'm barking up the wrong tree. And generally, I think that's good. I don't think we have enough of that discourse when it comes to prospects. I think prospect stuff, I think from the side where we're not on the prospects, we need to dig in a little bit and have these frank conversations. And it always helps me because we dig in a little bit. It helps me understand how does it work because it's not something that I'm familiar with. Now, if you watched last year's, I asked him why Sean Burke wasn't on the top 30 list, I asked him why Colson Montgomery is ahead of Edgar Carroll. I asked him why George Wilco and Grant Taylor are so high. Now Grant Taylor's high for everybody. They were first. They had Grant Taylor up there ahead of everyone else. Now the rest of the country has gotten in on the Grant Taylor thing, but they were first. They had him up there, I think, at number 6 overall, number 5, something like that. So that's the kind of conversation we're going to be having. So I'm looking forward to it. That should be good next week, Monday, March 10th. I want to thank Punky's Pizza and Pasta and all the 108 families up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you guys smashing the like button, comments, and of course the drinks and tips. Love the interaction. Maybe we'll try to do this again for the next solo one. We'll see you guys on Thursday. 108 tourney bracket reveal. I love all of you. Bye-bye.